Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. First, we're going to start with Kherson direction. Today, the Russian sources published a very interesting video how they managed to discover the Ukrainian HIMARS system in the vicinity of the village by the name of Bohdanivka. On this footage, you can see how the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian forces with HIMARS. I'm not saying, and this author of this video didn't tell us that this video was made like yesterday, the day before yesterday. Probably this video was made a few weeks or even months ago. But after the system launched every single missile it have, the Ukrainians took a decision obviously to redeploy these machines somewhere in the safe area. The Russians followed this system, and when the Ukrainians tried to hide that HIMARS, the Russians start bombing this territory. So basically, probably according to, if I'm wrong, correct me, this is the first footage from the Russian side of HIMARS, and this is probably the only evidence that Russians have that they managed to attack and to bomb the territory where the Ukrainians tried to hide this system. When talking about the map, the Ukrainians launched their missiles somewhere from Bohdanivka in this area. Then they were moving to the south and they tried to hide their HIMARS system in this forest. And after that, the Russians start bombing this territory with artillery rounds. Somewhere, let's say from Pryiutne, they were bombing this territory. So very interesting footage, but yet we haven't received like a real footage that the HIMARS was destroyed as a result of this or that artillery or missile strike. Now we are moving to Kherson, and according to information we have, during the previous night there was no activity on this territory, so there's nothing to tell about, and some footage was published from the village by the name of Dnieper. The Russians are using massively Mur missiles. This is self-navigated system, and this is not the first usage, and just regular military routine where the Russians try to attack and destroy the Ukrainians' ammo depots, warehouses, concentration of forces, and so on. Now we are moving further to Zaporozhye direction, and we have some updates from this territory. First of all, I would like to discuss with you Robotyne. As you can see, I have changed the map, at least currently the fields between Novoprokopovka, Kopony and Robotyne are in the gray zone. Today we got another geolocated confirmation from the Ukrainian side. On this video you can see how the Ukrainians managed to discover the Russian soldier who was moving on the south of Robotyne, and after that the Ukrainians tried to attack the Russian soldier with FPV drone. So the main things that we should note from this video is that the Russians do have access to the fields and fortifications that located on the south of Robotyne. Just yesterday we discussed another footage from the same area, a little bit to the south, another FPV drone strike, but as you can see there is a difference in days. There is no snow, for example, on this video. On the previous there were a lot of snow, but anyway, both this video confirms that the Russians did have control, or do have control over this territory, and not just like today, but for a few days or maybe weeks. So as we can see, the Ukrainians, I'll remind you that, for example, on the 7th of December we have already discussed that the Russians managed to capture the damaged and abandoned Leopard along this tree line and so on. So we see that during the previous week the Russians were moving to Robotyne, and as we can see there is almost no resistance from the Ukrainian side. It's very difficult for now to understand where exactly the Russian positions, maybe just on the western tree lines, maybe the Russians have already entered the southern part of Robotyne, but the only thing I understand for sure that the Russians will continue improvements, because as we discussed, there are no resistance from the Ukrainian side. Basically, the Ukrainians redeployed significant number of forces to Avdiivka area, and now they're trying just to hold the territory with the forces they have. Furthermore, we got more updates from the village by the name of Takmachka on the northern part of this area. The Russians continue bombardments of ex-prison. Once again, as you can see, there are no snow on this video, which can tell us that probably these bombardments took place not the previous night, but during the previous days, maybe before the Russians launched their attack in direction of Robotyne. The most important thing that we should note from this video is that the Russians have some certain focus over the ex-prison. that Ukrainians use as the base or headquarters or concentration of forces. And if you remember, just yesterday we discussed that the Russians attacked this territory also with the FAB 500. So a very big focus against this territory, which also can mean something. Now we are moving further to Donetsk direction, to Avdiivka area, not Avdiivka, but first to Pryiutne, yes, to this area. The Russian sources published the video how they were attacking the Ukrainian positions in direction among the fields, among the tree lines. This is geolocated video, and this video show us that as a result of offensive operation during the previous days, I'm not sure that this event took place during the previous night, we just got the footage and video confirmation, the Russians managed to establish control over this territory. So this was the area where the Russian armored vehicle was moving. So something like this. He was moving something like this. So we will adjust the map before the next video. Now we are moving to Avdiivka direction, and we have some updates from this territory as well. The Russian sources and Ukrainian sources are saying that Russia has deployed more than 40,000 troops to Avdiivka direction, and it's very quickly adding reserves, and as you understand, 40,000 is a very big, powerful army, but for now it's a very difficult question to understand where exactly the Russians are planning to attack, and because they do have some problems in Stepovo, Berdichi, the battle for Stepovo and Berdichi, at least for me, reminds the battle for Robotyne, but from the Ukrainian side. The Russians are sending waves one after another in this direction, trying to establish control over this city, but for now without any results. As I understand, the Russians are using some tactics in this area. They're using like waves one by one, but the main purpose of these waves is not to attack, is not to capture the Ukrainian positions, but to force the Ukrainians to send armored vehicles to counterattack. So the Russians, let's say, enter the village and they wait when the Ukrainians counterattack. As soon as the Ukrainians counterattack, the Russians try to step back towards the railway, and then using FPV drones and artillery system, the Russians try to destroy the reinforcements that arrives in this area. So this is the tactics. Obviously, either the Russians and the Ukrainians have losses, but for now this is the only thing that the Russians can do on this direction. Also, we got another footage from Avdiivka itself. This is the smoke screen that was established by the Russians to protect their forces, their soldiers, while they try to dig in deeper in this area. So this is the second confirmation of Russian presence in this area, and that the Russians managed to dig in deeper. Now, the next days, after they will establish complete control, they will continue their offensive operation further to the south in direction of the central part of Avdiivka. We haven't received anything from the southern direction, and now we are moving to Artyomovsk-Bakhmut direction, and according to information, we have a lot of activity, a lot of concentration of events on the line between Grigorovka, Bohdanivka, Khromovo, on this area. The Russians published another video of control over this territory, and the most important part is that there is snow in this area, and this video was made on this hill. So we need to understand that currently in Bohdanivka area also is covered with snow, and also we got 3 more videos of FPV drone and Lancet strikes, and all of them when talking about these videos, we don't see snow on this territory, which means that, for example, these drones and Lancet strikes took place obviously before the Russians managed to establish control over the tree line, the trenches that we just discussed. But anyway, we see the Russian concentration of fire, the Russian Lancet strikes, the number of destroyed armored vehicles and artillery systems along this line, and we see that the Russians do have some certain focus. I thought that maybe when the Russians manage to improve their positions in Khromovo and along the railways, they will take a small operational post, like 1 or 2 days, for regrouping, for getting more forces and so on. But now I see that the Russians are not planning to have established any operational post, and they will continue offensive operation. And probably today we're going to receive more positive for the Russians news, let's say, like getting more tree lines, more fortifications, and so on. And so we'll see what is going to be next. When talking talking about serious direction, we got the first footage from the railways. The Russians were bombing the Ukrainian fortifications and trenches. And I'll remind you that a few days ago we got some update that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish control over this territory. As you can see, under very heavy fire, the Ukrainian soldier was wounded, and they took a decision to step back from this territory and to evacuate the wounded soldier. And one more time, once again, as a result of Russian offensive operation, according to some sources, this territory was captured by the Russians. When talking about Kupinsk's direction, we have another video of Udaya Diary, 23rd day. The day that day started with losses from the Ukrainian side in the level of 152 soldiers, and by the end of the day, the Ukrainians lost, just as a result of work of one FPV drone operator, 157 soldiers. So basically, during another day, the Ukrainians lost additionally 5 soldiers of killed and wounded. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.